At the story's outset, a bustling mountain is depicted, its slopes covered with numerous houses. At its base, people labor relentlessly, crafting a mysterious substance. Among them, a curious girl dips her finger into the mixture and tastes it, excitedly exclaiming that it's candy. Her disruption frustrates the workers, and one angrily pushes her away, causing her to fall. Nearby laborers pause to watch the commotion. This is when we meet Li Huowang, the protagonist, who glares at the girl and snaps, "Foolish girl, this isn't candy, it's medicine." He mutters under his breath, "No matter how much you explain, they'll never understand." The girl stares at him blankly, her desire for the substance undeterred. The other workers seem strange, their behavior hinting at a lack of comprehension or morality. Madness seems to hang in the air. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierces the murmur of activity. Li Huowang turns to see a man grabbing a white-haired girl roughly. With a cruel laugh, the man sneers, "I want to play with your body," his intentions clear. The girl pleads, "Don't do this," her helplessness evident. Yet her cries only provoke grotesque laughter from those around them. Furious, Li Huowang picks up a tool and hurls it at the man, striking him on the head. The man yells in pain as the white-haired girl hides behind Li Huowang. Seething, the injured man growls, "You've made a huge mistake. When the master hears of this, you'll be dead." Unmoved, Li Huowang coldly replies, "I'm not afraid of the master. To me he's nothing." His boldness leaves everyone stunned. No one had ever spoken of the master with such defiance. The injured man sneers, warning, "You'll regret this." Before long, a guard arrives, his mere presence silencing the scene. Dressed in white, he announces, "The master has summoned Li Huowang." Wang is revealed to be the candy-obsessed girl. Ecstatic, she skips after the guard, convinced the master has called her to give her more candy. As they proceed, the white-haired girl clings to Li Huowang's clothes, pleading, "Don't go. It's too dangerous." But Li Huowang brushes her off, determined. The candy-obsessed girl remains blissfully unaware, humming and skipping along. As they leave the mountain, Li Huowang reflects on his anger, questioning why he let himself get so involved. His thoughts are interrupted when the girl playfully pushes him. Irritated, he grabs her hand and demands, "What is your problem?" She innocently asks, "Do you want candy?" Without responding, he accepts the substance she offers, knowing it's the medicine they've been making. They reach the master's domain, where a fire blazes beneath a massive pot. The master, a grotesque figure with bloody teeth, turns to them laughing. "You made me wait," he says, his voice dripping with malice. Suddenly, he grabs the candy-obsessed girl by the neck and hurls her into the boiling pot. She squeals, "Is this candy, master? Did you throw me in here to give me so much candy?" Even as her body is crushed and twisted, her delusion persists. Li Huowang watches in horror, paralyzed. The girl's screams echo as the master reduces her to a paste, her broken body fueling the fire. The realization hits Li Huowang like a blow. The medicine they've been making is crafted from human remains. Overcome, Li Huowang begins to whisper, "This isn't real. This is all a lie." Yet the stench from the cauldron rises, and the master inhales it with satisfaction, reveling in the twisted reality of their world. At the heart of the narrative, Li's persistent refrain, "This is all fake. Nothing is real," sets the tone for a startling turn of events. While muttering to himself, Li's words unintentionally catch the ear of his master, who misinterprets them as an insult, thinking Li has called him "fart master." Enraged, the master demands an explanation, shouting, "What did you say? What am I?" Li, lost in his own thoughts, continues murmuring, "This is all fake. This master's voice is fake." Frustrated by Li's apparent disregard, the master attacks him, furious at being ignored. But before the confrontation escalates, reality begins to unravel. Li's body starts to disappear, glowing with an intense green light, until the scene freezes entirely. The next moment, Li awakens in a hospital. Restrained and surrounded by silence, he hears only the rhythmic beeping of machines and his own heartbeat. He is alone in a stark room, his surroundings contrasting sharply with the chaotic hallucination he just experienced. It becomes clear that Li is hospitalized, and his condition takes the story in an unexpected direction. A doctor enters, asking Li about his latest hallucination. Li, distressed, describes witnessing horrifying events, a master crushing a girl into paste and turning her remains into medicine. Even as he recounts the vision, Li struggles to understand its meaning, questioning if there's a deeper connection or purpose behind these vivid, seemingly real experiences. The doctor listens attentively, documenting Li's account on a tablet, but dismisses Li's musings about justice and purpose. None of this is true, the doctor insists. Li, however, finds little solace in the familiar dismissal, his frustration evident. The doctor warns that Li must accept these visions as illusions to leave the hospital. Until then he will remain confined. It's revealed that Li is in a mental hospital, and his isolation weighs heavily on him. The doctor reiterates, when you stop seeing all this as real, you'll be able to leave. After the doctor departs, Li gazes longingly, yearning for freedom and normalcy. Shortly after, a girl enters the room, her cheerful demeanor a stark contrast to Li's despair. She overheard part of the doctor's words and optimistically tells Li, "You can leave the hospital soon." The girl, Nana, is Li's childhood friend. Her affectionate gaze and efforts to cheer him reveal her deep care for him. Smiling, Nana produces a surprise from her bag, Li's schoolbooks. She explains that the exams are 6 months away, and she convinced their teacher to lend the books so Li could study and stay on track. However, Li reacts with mock dismay, jokingly asking, "Is this a gift? What kind of gift is this?" Though playful, Li's resistance hints at his deeper struggles. Bored and confined, he finds little motivation, but Nana's presence seems to momentarily lift his spirits. As the scene unfolds, the story subtly intertwines hope with Li's ongoing battle against his haunting hallucinations and the confines of his reality. Now, Li's childhood friend Nana has brought schoolbooks from the teacher to help him prepare for his exams, allowing him to study while in the hospital. But instead of being happy about this, Li feels even more bored at the thought of studying. Nana, noticing his reaction, takes one of the books and playfully hits him on the head, saying, "Do you really think I'd only bring books to increase your stress? Do you think I'm such a bad friend?" She then smiles and pulls out a video game from her bag. Li, excited to take the game, reaches for it, but Nana teasingly pulls it away, saying, "First call me big sister, then I'll give it to you." Reluctantly, Li calls her big sister, leaning in close to her face to say it. This makes Nana shy as she notices how close he is, feeling his breath on her face. Blushing, she quickly hands him the game. As soon as Li gets the game, he lies down and starts playing immediately, ignoring everything else. While playing, he remarks, "Maybe passing the time in this hospital won't be so difficult now because of this game." He looks genuinely happy, grateful to his friend for bringing him something enjoyable. Nana watches him with loving eyes and says, "Don't spend the whole day playing games. You should study too. That's why I brought the books for you." But Li ignores her advice, completely engrossed in the game. At this point, Nana reminds him of their childhood promise. Li suddenly stops playing, his expression growing serious. He says, "Yes, I remember. We promised to go to college together. I haven't forgotten." He then leans closer to her and adds, "We'll join the same college and I'll leave this hospital soon. I'll get better and try my best." Overcome with emotion, Li hugs Nana tightly. Nana, hearing his words, smiles warmly and hugs him back just as tightly, both feeling hopeful about the future they dream of together. For a moment, everything feels brighter. Time passes as they continue talking, but it gets very late, and Li realizes that Nana might be delayed in getting home. Concerned, he offers to walk her to the hospital gate. Nana agrees, and as Li begins to put on his slippers, something unexpected happens. A sudden, unbearable headache grips Li. The pain is so intense that he can barely stand. Holding his head, he mutters, "What's happening to me?" He grabs onto the nearby table to steady himself, feeling like his head might explode. That's when his eyes land on something familiar, the medicine pestle from his hallucinations. It's lying on the table just like in the visions he had described. Shocked and confused, Li wonders if he is hallucinating again, but this time it feels different. Unlike before, the hallucinations seem to be manifesting in the real world. While he stands there, overwhelmed by pain, Nana notices and asks, "What's wrong? Are you okay? Does your head hurt? Please tell me what's happening." But Li doesn't answer her. Instead, he mutters to himself, "I've done everything the doctor said. I've taken all the medicine. Why is this still happening to me?" His frustration grows as he realizes that despite following all the instructions, nothing has improved. Suddenly, Li forces himself to stop and pretends everything is fine. Smiling weakly, he says to Nana, "Did I scare you? I was just joking." He tries to laugh it off as if it were a prank, concealing his pain and confusion. Nana, however, doesn't find it funny. She turns her back to him, saying, "Stop doing childish things. You scared me. You're not a kid anymore, so don't joke about serious matters like this." Angry and upset, she starts walking away. Li, realizing he has upset her, calls out, "Wait." I was just joking. Don't be mad at me. He looks back at the table to check if the pestle is still there, but it's gone. Confused, he wonders if it was just another hallucination. Deciding it's best not to dwell on it, Li follows Nana to apologize. When he catches up, he asks her to forgive him. Nana, still playful, touches his cheek with her finger and says, "I'll come visit you again next week. Take care of yourself, eat properly, and don't forget to study the book I brought you." Her words reveal how much she cares for Li. Hearing them, Li smiles and says, "Okay, I'll take care of myself. You take care too." As Nana walks out of the hospital gate, she waves goodbye. Li raises his hand, calling out loudly, "Take care of yourself, Nana." Watching her leave, he feels grateful for her support and love, even as his mind remains burdened by his worsening condition and the strange connection between his hallucinations and reality. After Nana left, Li returned to his room in the hospital, but his mind remained fixated on the medicine pestle he saw earlier. Walking slowly, he muttered to himself, "Has my mental health gotten worse?" This was the first time his hallucinations seemed to intrude into reality, and the thought made him anxious. Until now, his hallucinations only occurred when he closed his eyes, transporting him to that strange world. But now, he was seeing elements of those visions in real life. Fear crept in as he thought about the implications. If his condition worsened, he might not be able to go to college with Nana as they had planned. The promise they made might be broken. He shook his head, recalling his father's reassurances that the doctor treating him was excellent and would cure him soon. Li trusted his father deeply, believing that he must have chosen the best doctor. Determined to hold on to that hope, he raised his hand and shouted aloud, "I'm going to go completely crazy staying in this place with all these lunatics." As his voice echoed through the hallway, he suddenly felt something in his pocket. Confused, he paused and reached inside, saying to himself, "What's in my pocket?" He was certain he hadn't placed anything there. Pulling the object out, Li's eyes widened in shock. It was the same candy the white-haired girl had given him in his hallucination. His heart raced as he stared at it, unable to comprehend how it could have ended up here. "This is the same candy the girl gave me," he whispered. "How did it get into my pocket?" His hands trembled as he held the candy. Desperate to determine if it was real, he decided to test it. Putting it in his mouth, he was overwhelmed by its taste. It was disturbingly sweet yet carried an unsettling undertone. His stomach churned as he remembered how that candy was made in the hallucination, by crushing humans into paste. Li's thoughts spiraled. If his hallucinations were manifesting in reality, what did that mean for his condition? He clutched the candy, now more desperate than ever for answers. If the doctor sees this, maybe he'll understand what's happening to me. Maybe I'm not crazy after all, he reasoned. Hope flickered in his chest as he thought this might lead to his discharge from the hospital. But just as he started running toward the doctor's office, he stopped abruptly. A chilling realization struck him. If the things I get in my hallucinations appear in reality, he said to himself, then this could be an opportunity. His eyes gleamed with a strange intensity, glowing faintly in the dim light of the corridor. Li's face twisted into an unsettling expression, his mind racing with possibilities. Deciding to keep this revelation to himself, he pocketed the candy and turned away. Whatever his plan was, he wasn't going to share it with the doctor just yet. Later, we see Li in his hallucinatory world, shouting at the strange inhabitants, "Do you people have money? Silver? Gold? Anything?" His voice echoed, but the people around him only stared blankly, unable to comprehend his words. Frustrated, Li sighed. "No matter how much I explain, you won't understand. You're all addicts, too far gone to grasp what I'm saying," he muttered under his breath. The people scratched their heads, staring at him with vacant expressions. Suddenly, the white-haired girl called out to him, "Li brother, can you come here for a moment?" She gestured for him to follow her to a quiet corner. Curious, Li followed. When they were alone, the girl reached down and revealed a small gold bracelet hidden around her ankle. Smiling warmly, she handed it to him. "Here, Li brother. I've kept this safe, but I want you to have it," she said softly. Li was taken aback. "Why are you giving this to me?" he asked. The girl looked down, her voice wistful. "You saved me before and I trust you. Besides, I have no use for it here. I'll never leave this place." Li examined the bracelet carefully. "It's small but it's real gold," he murmured. Pocketing it, he promised, "I'll return this to you someday." To thank her, Li handed her a piece of candy. "This is really good. Try it," he said, smiling. It wasn't the same candy she had given him before. This one was real. How Li obtained it remained a mystery for now. The girl accepted the candy with a shy smile, But as this exchange took place, the other people around them started laughing eerily, their eyes glinting with a sinister light. Among the crowd, a man sneered, "This is getting interesting." Their laughter grew unsettling, making the atmosphere tense. Just then, a guard appeared and barked, "What are you all doing standing around? Get back to work." The laughter ceased instantly and the people scattered, their expressions fearful. It was clear that they were terrified of the guards and the master who controlled this world. The guard's eyes scanned the crowd and he growled, "You weren't brought here to waste time. Focus on your tasks." Li stood still, clutching the gold bracelet in his pocket. His thoughts churned as he formulated his next move. The guard then looks at Li and the white-haired girl. Because they were the reason everyone had gathered there. The guard notices Li taking the gold and gives him a very suspicious look, thinking to himself, "Are you planning to make medicine with that gold?" The guard is suspicious of what he is going to do with the gold, because he will never be able to leave this place. So what is the use of taking it? Li keeps looking at the guard with his sharp eyes. And maybe he was thinking, why is the guard looking at me for so long? Before leaving, the guard tells Li, "Get back to work. If the master's medicine is not ready on time, he'll turn you into the medicine." The guard had something shiny tied with a rope around his waist, and it was glowing brightly. Li notices it and asks, "Is that an ancient jade pendant?" Looking at it, Li smiles, and from his expression, we understand that he wants to take it. He feels it must be very ancient and old, so if he could somehow take it to his world, he could sell it and get a lot of money. Later, at 3 a.m. when everyone is asleep, Li sneaks into the guard's cave to take that object. He finds it very easily because it glows brightly in the night. His luck was good because the guard had apparently gone outside on patrol during the night. Li might have known this, which is why he timed it perfectly. Holding the jade pendant in his hand, Li says to himself and thinks of his childhood friend Nana. Maybe now I can pay the college fees and cover my hospital expenses. Li is very poor, which is why he is doing all this. This is also the reason he initially asked everyone for any gold or silver, so he could take it back to the real world, sell it, and end the poverty for both himself and his childhood friend Nana. With great happiness he runs down the stairs, holding the pendant tightly, saying excitedly, "I found an antique pendant. I found a pendant." As he rushes down the stairs he notices a light. It looks like someone is coming up the stairs. He thinks it could be a guard, and if they see him at this time, it could become a big problem. Li panics completely and has no idea what to do. Just then, the terrifying guard appears behind him and says quietly, "What are you doing here so late at night?" Hearing this, Li is utterly shocked. He can't even bring himself to turn around. He's so scared, thinking that he has been caught. He imagines the guard might report him to the master, who will punish or even kill him. This is the same guy from whose cave he stole the jade pendant. Li turns around, trembling, and says, "I didn't do anything. I was just passing through." But then he notices the guard's clothes, which are different, so he asks why the guard is dressed like that. The guard doesn't answer and instead grabs Li by his clothes, dragging him along. While dragging him, the guard says, "People are escaping from here and you'll have to come with us." There were other guards with him, and as they pulled Li along, one of them added, "If you stay here you'll die one day." Li asks in disbelief, "Are you guys really escaping from this place?" He finds it hard to believe because they are all guards, and the idea of guards running away surprises him. Suddenly the angry guard shoves Li roughly and yells, "You'll never be able to escape from this place if you don't come with us. What did you think? That you could bribe us with money and tips to get out of here?" It's then that Li realizes the guard must have assumed that when he collected gold from the girl and asked others for money, his plan was to gather everything and bribe the master or the guards to escape from this place. This is why the guard seems so suspicious of him. But in reality, Li was collecting all of this so he could take it to his world and use it to help his friend and end his poverty, something the guard didn't know. But the biggest thing is that all the guards want to escape from here, which shows how dangerous this place is. This is where the story takes a different turn, because Li thought that maybe the master and the guards had some kind of freedom in this place, but now even the guards want to escape. You can imagine how dangerous this place really is. Li doesn't say anything to the guard and thinks to himself, "No matter what happens, I'll return to my real world. I've gotten what I wanted." He presses his eyes tightly, trying to hold back the emotions, to stay focused on the hospital. So Li acted this way because if he had stayed in that place, they might have taken him away, potentially leading to a fight. Anything could have occurred. That's why he came out of the hallucination, believing that by doing so, everything would stop, as it was his hallucination. Hence he closed his eyes and returned to the real world. When his eyes opened, it was nighttime and he found himself tied to the bed. Maybe the doctor was also asleep. Whenever Li closes his eyes, the doctor likely restrains him to prevent him from escaping. It's possible that while Li is trapped in his hallucinatory world, the doctor takes certain actions. This could explain why the doctor keeps him bound. Looking around, Li mutters to himself that it's still very late at night, and the nurses are probably all asleep. He feels the need to check if the pendant and gold he took have made their way into this reality. However, if a nurse were there, they might have untied his hands and feet, allowing him to verify it. For now, he must wait until morning as he has no other choice. So, Li closes his eyes once more to see what's happening in that other place since there's nothing else to do at this late hour. When he returns to that place, he finds himself standing there again, and it seems all the guards have left. Perhaps they fled, leaving him behind. Laughing, he says, "This is my hallucination. No one can harm me because none of this is real. How could they hurt me?" He laughs again. Then, in the early morning within the hallucination, a man rushes into a cave shouting, "Wake up, everyone. The master has summoned us immediately. Hurry." His tone suggests something urgent has happened. Possibly the guards have deserted. Realizing this, the master must have called everyone. The people, now awake, murmur among themselves, wondering why they were summoned so abruptly. One man warns, "Let's move quickly, or we'll be in serious trouble if we're late." Meanwhile, Li lies deep in thought. He knows why the master called everyone. It's because the guards have fled. Soon, the people gather at the place the master designated. Likely, many individuals work there, which is why such a large crowd has assembled. They whisper among themselves, "What happened? Do you know why we're here?" The master emerges from his home and addresses the crowd, "Are you all here?" Li, standing nearby, thinks, "What is this old man up to now? He treats us like dogs, summoning us at his whim. Anyone who's late gets killed on the spot." The master continues, "Last night at 3 a.m., some of my own guards tried to escape." The master then reveals 4 individuals tied with ropes. Li, shocked, realizes this is why everyone was called, to witness what happens to those who try to flee. The master announces, "This betrayal has deeply hurt me. My most trusted guards attempted to run away without informing me." He drags the tied guards in front of the workers and proclaims, "Here the rules are simple, rewards for loyalty, death for betrayal." He likely summoned everyone to witness this horrifying punishment as a warning against escape attempts. One of the tied guards looks at Li, terror written across his face. He knows his end is near. Li observes the scene and mutters to himself, "How quickly they were caught. Pathetic. These guards knew the place better than anyone and still failed." The master then yanks on the rope, performs some kind of magic and shouts, "Open!" The ground splits apart and black, octopus-like tentacles emerge, brutally killing the 4 guards in a grotesque manner. Their screams pierce the air, horrifying everyone present, including Li. Unable to watch, Li hears only the anguished cries, which shake him to his core. Trembling, he starts repeating to himself, "This isn't real. None of this is real. It's all a hallucination." He tries to calm himself, recalling the doctor's words, not to take these illusions seriously. But then, a black tentacle appears near him, carrying one of the guards impaled on it. Seeing this, Li freezes in shock. He begins questioning his reality. Did I create something so terrifying? Could the guard's pain be real? But how? To steady himself, he reminds himself of the doctor's advice and convinces himself that his fear is making the hallucination more intense. "It's all fake. None of it can hurt me," he repeats. Above, the master declares, "Anyone who tries to escape will face this fate or worse." Laughing, he adds, "I might even use their bodies for medicine." It becomes clear the master is using people in his experiments to achieve immortality. As the master walks by Li, he asks, "Why didn't you try to escape with them?" This reveals the master knew of the guard's plans involving Li. But Li remains silent, thinking, "This is just a hallucination. I don't need to fear him." The master places a hand on Li's head and says, "Good. You made the right choice by not joining them. You'll no longer be a mere worker. You'll manage the supply room." Li realizes he's been promoted, a safer and better position, but he also knows this favor comes with risks. Before leaving, the master gives Li a new name, Xuanyang, after one of the guards he just killed. This unnerves Li as it shows how little human life is valued here. The master hands Li a bag containing 5 pills, explaining, "Each pill extends your life by 10 years and enhances your strength. Use them wisely." He laughs, adding, "Here good deeds bring rewards and betrayal brings death." Li reflects on his situation, realizing that while he has been rewarded, the danger remains ever present. Then he snaps out of his hallucination and returns to his reality. He finds it hard to believe that everything he had brought back from there now exists in the real world as well. Placing everything on the bed, he examines it closely. Perhaps it was just an illusion. That's why he needed to carefully check if it was real or not. To uncover the truth, he would have to show it to someone. Li then stares at the pill in his hand with astonishment. If everything the master said was true, consuming this pill would not only drastically enhance his strength but also prolong his life. A very enticing prospect. Talking to himself, he wonders if it would really work. But how could he find out? Hesitantly, he decides to use its power to confirm. Just as he's about to take the pill, his friend Nana bursts through the door furiously, almost breaking it open. "Why did you call me here? What's so urgent?" she demands. "I left my class, skipped my meal, and rushed over because you said it was important. You made it sound like an earthquake hit. What's going on? Do you have something serious to say? If this is just another prank or act like last time, tell me now. You'll regret wasting my time." Li doesn't respond and quietly walks to close the door. Looking around cautiously, he locks the door and shuts the windows too. Seeing this, Nana feels awkward and stammers, "What are you doing? Why are you closing everything? There are cameras in this room and the nurse can hear us. If we do anything, they'll know." Nana assumes Li might want to kiss her, or perhaps something more, which makes her even more flustered. When she mentions that the nurse might overhear them, the speaker suddenly crackles and the nurse, laughing, teases them. "Go ahead and do whatever you want. We won't listen." Ignoring the comment, Li holds up the pendant in front of Nana and speaks into the speaker. "Will you stop disturbing us? Don't you understand the concept of privacy? We can have a private moment too." Nana, noticing the pendant, asks, "What is this pendant? What do you want me to do with it?" Li responds, "Don't say anything. Let me whisper something in your ear. Don't react. Just listen. If you react, there might be a camera in this room and it could create a huge problem." Days later, we see that nearly 5 days have passed. Li reflects on how his family and parents don't trust him. Everyone thinks he's lost his mind. The only person who believes in him is Nana. She trusts him and doesn't see him as crazy. Li relies on Nana entirely, knowing she won't mock him like his family and doctors. To him, she is his last hope, the one person who understands him. At that moment, the microphone crackles again, and the nurse announces that his girlfriend has come to visit him. Li, who had been anxiously waiting, feels overjoyed upon hearing this. A smile spreads across his face as he mutters, "I knew my friend would come. He'd never betray me. I trust him completely." As he eagerly heads out of his room, some hospital guards approach. Being in a mental hospital, guards are stationed to maintain order. When Li notices them, he feels confused and decides to ask one of them what's happening. He asks, "What's going on? Is something wrong? Why are you all so prepared?" One of the guards quickly replies, "Close your door and don't come out, no matter what you hear or see." The guard's tone is urgent and almost fearful, leaving Li puzzled. The guard explains that a dangerous patient has escaped. A true psychopath capable of anything, even murder. He warns Li to stay alert and cautious. Before leaving, the guard instructs him to report immediately if he spots the escapee. Left alone, Li processes what he's just heard. He thinks about how dangerous the situation must be for there to be such a commotion. Still, his friend is waiting for him and that's his priority. Despite the risk, he decides he has no choice but to step outside. He still needs to meet his friend, who must be waiting for him. Cautiously, he sneaks out to find his friend, making sure no one notices him, especially not the escaped psycho. If that lunatic spots him, it could spell big trouble since he is incredibly dangerous. Somehow, Li manages to slip out of the hospital and meet his friend in a secluded spot. The two of them start talking privately. Nana tells him, "I sent off the gold and the pendant you gave me. The pendant was ancient and valuable, so it sold for a good price. But the gold was too light, so I didn't get much for it." Hearing this, Li runs a hand through his hair in a stylish manner and exclaims, "I knew it. I knew it. I'm not crazy." He then bursts into laughter, a sound unsettling and eerie. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts and he begins experiencing hallucinations again. This time, however, he doesn't feel scared. He reasons that there must be a deeper meaning behind these events, or perhaps it's all real. This leads to a cascade of questions in his mind. What if it's not a hallucination? What if it's all truly happening? Could he really die there? And if he dies there, would he also die in the real world? Or perhaps, when he closes his eyes, he wakes up in another person's body, living in a different reality where everything is real and nothing is imagined. But all of this remains a mystery. Perhaps these answers lie ahead in the story. There's no need to worry, I'm not giving away any spoilers. In a burst of joy, Li hugs his friend Nana tightly. But in the panel shown in the manhwa, it's revealed that Li is actually hugging the white-haired girl from his hallucination. To Li, she appears vividly real, though no one else can see her. Caught in his delusion, he hugs her tightly, shouting over and over, "I'm not crazy, Nana. I'm not crazy." Nana, feeling awkward, says softly, "Let me down. I might fall." Li feels overjoyed, believing that everything from his strange reality is real, and that he may soon be able to leave the hospital. As they walk together, they continue talking. Li confidently declares, "My ability is real." Li discovers that he can bring anything from this other world into reality. Although he still believes that the world he visits is just a hallucination, he's convinced that his ability allows him to transfer items from there to the real world. He's certain that the world in his visions isn't real, but the objects he brings back definitely are. Excited, he shares his thoughts with Nana, asking, "Are you ready to become rich? We're going to be loaded with this ability, and our days of struggling will be over. But I have to be careful not to get caught while taking things unnoticed." In response, Nana punches him and snaps, "I don't care about being rich. Are you out of your mind? I only care about you. I want you to get better and be okay. That's all I want. I don't need a fortune. Promise me, Li. Even though you have this ability, you'll still go to your checkups and take your medication on time. Follow everything the doctor tells you, no excuses, no shortcuts. Promise me you won't do anything reckless." Li doesn't say anything but gazes at his friend with heartfelt admiration. In that moment, he realizes how much Nana truly cares for him. Money means nothing to her compared to his health and well-being. He softly promises her, "I'll continue my treatment. I'll take my medicines and follow the doctor's advice." Just as they are speaking, a terrifying man suddenly appears behind them. He grabs Nana and shoves her forcefully to the ground. It's the same dangerous patient the hospital guards have been searching for, a deranged psycho. Li freezes for a moment before screaming, "He's my friend. Don't hurt him. Let him go." Panicking, Li rushes forward, but the psycho grips Nana even tighter, causing her to cry out in pain. Her screams send a chill through the air. Just as Li is about to intervene, the crazed man strikes him on the head with a rock. Blood begins to pour from the wound, and Li collapses to the ground. In that critical moment, Li recalls the medicine that the master had given him during his hallucinations. If the pendant in gold were real, then the medicine must also exist. And with it, the strength and long life promised by the master. Seeing his friend Nana in tears, overcome with pain, Li feels his anger and emotions spiral out of control. Unable to hold back any longer, he grabs the pills. In the Manhua image, we see the determination reflected in Nana's eyes as Li swallows the medicine. The moment he consumes it, the atmosphere around him shifts dramatically. A surge of immense power courses through his body. The aura radiating from him is so intense that Nana is left stunned, unable to say a word, and even the psycho freezes in terror. As the crazed man begins to turn his head, Li reacts with lightning speed. He strikes the psycho hard in the face, sending him crashing to the ground. Li presses the man's face beneath his hand with such force that the bones crack, and blood begins to flow. Fueled by rage, Li tears the psycho's skin from his face and flings it aside, exposing raw flesh. The man screams in agony, the sound chilling and unbearable. At that moment, it becomes clear that Li has lost control. His mind, clouded by fury and despair over what had happened to his friend, no longer functions rationally. He continues to beat the psycho mercilessly, his eyes glowing red with rage. "How dare you touch my friend?" Li shouts. "Why did you hurt him?" Over and over he strikes the man, his voice filled with a mix of pain and vengeance. "How dare you ignore me? I told you to stop, but you didn't listen." His relentless assault reveals a frightening transformation. Li no longer seems human. He moves like a demon, devoid of empathy, his heart hardened with rage. By the time the hospital guards arrive, they are horrified by the scene. They struggle to restrain Li as he continues his relentless attack. Even as the guards pile on, it takes all their strength to finally pull him away. Li is chained down, his body radiating a terrifying power. The guards exchange wary glances, realizing this is no ordinary patient. The medicine had changed him. Though he wasn't a psycho before, the pills seemed to awaken something dark within him. Now restrained, it's clear that he can no longer be seen as normal. Li lets out a piercing scream. I only did this to protect my friend. I didn't do anything wrong. Let me go. I was just trying to protect him. Didn't you all see how much pain that man caused him? The doctor, standing in front of him, crosses his arms and says firmly, this wasn't just a fight, Li. No one fights like that. What you did was far beyond a simple fight. You didn't just defend yourself or your friend. You brutally attacked that psycho. You tore the skin off his face. Is this your idea of protection? What you did wasn't human. Only a psycho would act this way. And today it's clear, you're no different. In fact, you're worse. You're a demon in disguise. The doctor's voice grows colder as he steps closer. Now tell me the truth. How did you beat that man so viciously? Where did this power come from? You've been here for weeks. I've seen you struggling to eat. You were weak, barely able to move some days. So how all of a sudden do you have this kind of strength? What changed? What are you hiding? Li remains silent, avoiding the doctor's piercing gaze. His thoughts race. If I tell him, he'll think I'm even crazier. He'll punish me even more. The doctor, noticing Li's silence, narrows his eyes and says, answer me, Li, properly. If you lie or refuse to speak, the consequences will be severe. You haven't seen my true nature yet. When my patients lie to me, I make sure they regret it deeply. I've been patient with you so far, but don't test me. If you don't speak up, I'll make your life here a living hell. Something you'll never forget. Even with the doctor's threats hanging in the air, Li says nothing. He keeps his thoughts to himself. Why should I tell him? He'll just think I'm crazy. And if I tell him the truth, they'll start running tests on me again. They'll take everything I bring into this world, and I'll never have the chance to sell it. Li stays silent, staring at the floor, his fists clenched. The doctor leaned closer, his voice sharp and commanding. Are you listening to me? Close your eyes, he said firmly. Li hesitated, unsure of what the doctor intended. Refusing to comply, he stared back in defiance. The doctor's irritation flared. I told you to close your eyes, he barked. Reluctantly, Li finally began to close his eyes. As his eyelids shut, the world around him blurred and dissolved. And when he opened them again, he found himself in the hallucination world. A sense of relief washed over him, and he thought, maybe this is how it's meant to be. In the hospital, they're always talking to me, questioning me, doubting me. But here I'm free. Here no one can ask me questions. This is my escape. In this world, he saw a massive statue of an old man sitting in a meditative pose. Nearby stood his master, the one who always seemed to guide him in this strange place. His master spoke with authority, addressing a group gathered around him. Today we have a newcomer joining us, the master announced. Huowang, you'll be working with us from now on. If he makes any mistakes, forgive him. He's new here and doesn't yet understand this place or its work. But I trust that he will learn everything gradually. Beside Huowang stood another man, older and more experienced. The master continued, you'll be his senior. It's your responsibility to guide him, teach him about this place, and show him how things are done. Now, the master said with finality, it's time to rest. It's 9 o'clock. Let's have dinner and then call it a day. As the group began to disperse, Li noticed something odd. One of the men, standing next to the master, was staring at him with an intense, almost unnerving gaze. The man's piercing eyes seemed to hold some kind of knowledge about him. Li couldn't shake the feeling and thought to himself, why is this guy looking at me like that? Am I a girl or something? Is there something on my face? What's his deal? It was the first time Li had seen this man in the hallucination world, and they had no connection. So why the intense stare? Later, as Li and his assigned senior walked up a flight of stairs, Li broke the silence and asked, who was that guy staring at me back there? And why was he looking at me like that? The senior glanced at Li and answered, his name is Senior Brother Jin-kan. He's unique. You'll get used to him. Li learned from his senior that the man's name was Jin-kan. The senior continued, ever since Jin betrayed the master, there's only been one inner disciple, Brother Jin-kan. He's the master's most trusted confidant and handles all the important tasks. The master relies on him completely. Whoever you meet here, show them respect. Speak politely to everyone and don't act rudely. If you do, the master won't take it lightly. He's very strict when it comes to respect, so be mindful of that. As someone new to this world, Li appreciated the advice. He nodded and said, thanks for explaining everything. I'm new here and don't know much yet. Eager to contribute, Li asked, now that I'm the master's official disciple, what's my first task? What should I do next? His senior replied, For now, your main responsibility is to handle supply tasks around this place. Even though you're officially a disciple, you're not close to the master yet. If you want to earn his trust, you'll have to work hard and remain loyal to him. Always show respect. If you do well, the master might one day teach you the ultimate secret. Immortality? Li's eyes widened with excitement at the mention of immortality. Immortality? He exclaimed. Can the master really teach me? When will he teach me? Tell me, please. His senior chuckled at Li's enthusiasm and said, Calm down. Right now, the master isn't going to teach you. He doesn't trust anyone easily. The only person he trusts is Jin-kan. If you want to learn about immortality, you'll first need to win the master's heart. That means working hard, proving your loyalty, and becoming an inner disciple. Even then, it's not guaranteed. Many people have tried and failed to earn his trust, and it often takes years. For now, forget about immortality. Focus on your current tasks. Maybe in 1 or 2 years, if you're persistent and loyal, the master will see your worth and begin teaching you. Li's amazement grew as he processed this information. He thought to himself, this place is truly incredible. So many hidden secrets lie here. If I could learn about immortality, it would change everything. After learning about the hidden wonders of the place, Li's curiosity grew insatiable. He wanted to uncover all the mysteries it held. However, his immediate focus remained clear. To bring something valuable from this world back to the real one. Not just to escape poverty for himself but to help his friends too. That thought consumed him. Then, his perspective shifted when he stumbled upon a place where medicines were made. He watched in horror as people were killed, their essence fueling the creation of magical substances. A large cauldron bubbled violently, and strange, shimmering ingredients were added to it. The master stood before the cauldron, opening it with a commanding gesture. Inside, the contents glowed as 2 magical medicines formed, one green and one red. Li was stunned. How foolish have I been? He thought. I was only thinking of taking money from this world, but these medicines hold unimaginable power. If I could take them to the real world, I could become invincible, maybe even immortal. The desire to take the medicines burned within him. He imagined harnessing their power to reshape his life, to protect his friends, and to achieve anything he desired. But then a troubling thought crossed his mind. What if I take the medicine without knowing its effects? What if it's too much for my body to handle? I could overdose and lose control, or worse, die. He realized he needed to tread carefully. First, he had to learn everything about the medicines and their powers. Determined, he resolved to focus on his current task, earning the master's trust. If he could do that, perhaps the master would teach him the secrets of immortality. As Li watched, the master transferred the magical medicines into bottles with a flick of his hand. His movements precise and almost hypnotic. Then the master turned to Li and said, If you're here for the supplies, go and bring them. The girl with the white hair. Li froze. His blood ran cold. The girl with the white hair? His master intended to use her, his friend, the one who called him brother, as a component in the cauldron. Li's mind raced. How could I do this? How could I betray her and bring her to die? He couldn't bring himself to even consider such a thing. But before he could respond, the master stepped closer, his tone growing sharp. Didn't you hear me? I said bring the supplies. Feeling trapped, Li closed his eyes tightly, unable to face the situation. He willed himself to return to his real world, desperate to escape the impossible choice. When he opened his eyes, he found himself back in the hospital. Standing before him were the doctor and his mother, their faces filled with concern. Mom? Li asked, surprised. What are you doing here? His mother rarely visited him, and her presence made him uneasy. His mother's eyes were filled with worry as she said, The doctor called me. He told me about what happened to you. That you were attacked, hurt badly on your head. She stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Are you okay, my son? Do you have a headache? Li forced a smile, trying to reassure her. I'm fine, Mom. I don't feel any pain. But deep down, his mind was far from fine. The guilt of leaving the white-haired girl behind and the dread of what might happen to her gnawed at him. Yet, he couldn't bring himself to explain anything to his mother. You don't need to worry, Mom. Everything's okay. His mom looks at him and says, You have become so thin. Don't you eat in the hospital? Don't you like the food here? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror? You have become so thin. His mom took out the grape from the bag and said, This is your favorite, right? I know it. Come on, open your mouth. It's very sweet. You'll like it a lot. While eating, he says, Mom, don't worry so much about me and don't trouble yourself so much. "Are you really here just to spend time with me?" Because he asks, his mom comes here very rarely. And it might be very few times that his mom doesn't get time to come here. Maybe that's why he is asking if you are here to spend time with me. His mom then feeds him all the grapes and talks to him for a while. His mom says, "If you don't get up, the doctor will take me to the crazy man's parents. And I will scold them a lot." His parents are waiting downstairs, so the doctor tells his mom that the crazy old man's family is waiting downstairs. So hurry up or they will leave. His mom says, "Let me talk to my son for a little while longer. There is still something important I want to tell him." Because of this, it's clear that his mom loves Li so much. And she is very strict with their parents for throwing stones at her son's head. Li says that he didn't do anything. He just fought with the old man to save his friend. His mom tells him not to worry, that she always trusts him and will handle everything. So he doesn't need to be concerned. Li looks at his mom with tear-filled eyes. And as she leaves, she tells him to always listen to the doctor and take his medicine on time, assuring him that he will get better soon, and that he doesn't need to be scared because his mom will always be with him. When his mom was about to leave the room, she pretended to be happy, but in reality, she was even more worried because his health was not improving. However, she didn't show her concern or sadness in front of him. Her eyes were filled with anger as she thought about the madman's parents, who had harmed her son and put him in this condition. But the way Li had fought the madman, perhaps in his case the injury on his head was nothing. The madman had attacked his friend first, so it was his fault. In anger, she leaves to meet the madman's parents. As Li looks at his mom, his vision starts to blur. The doctor asks him to close his eyes, saying they will talk later. When Li opens his eyes again, he finds his master standing right in front of him. The master speaks, but Li is too troubled to pay attention. His thoughts are consumed with the white-haired girl. He wants to check on her to make sure she's all right. As he considers returning to find her, his master suddenly grabs his face with a tight grip. Startled and confused, Li struggles to understand why his master is holding him like that. Before he can ask, the master pulls something from his hand and says, "If you're awake now, eat this, my servant." Laughing, the master shoves the object into Li's mouth. Li is horrified as he feels tiny tentacles, like those of an octopus, wriggling inside his mouth. The tentacles are alive, moving, and Li can't make sense of what he's being forced to eat. The master had shoved it in so suddenly that Li hadn't even seen what it was before it was in his mouth. The master explains that this will prevent Li from panicking or being scared, perhaps thinking Li had fainted in fear when he was asked to bring the white-haired girl to this place. Li refuses, insisting, "I'm not sick and there's no need for this." He pulls the black tentacles from his mouth, and as he looks at them, he realizes his tongue has turned black. The master, unbothered, orders his guards to force-feed Li. Two guards approach with firm grips, holding Li's head and knives, ready to force the substance into his mouth. The master coldly commands, "You must eat this or they'll make you eat it." As the guards prepare to hold him down, Li suddenly feels bubbles rising around him, and his face slowly starts to sink into water. The moment his face touches the water, Li wakes up in his real world, where his friend Nana is looking at him, calling his name in concern. Nana, worried, asks if something is wrong or if Li had seen something frightening in his hallucination. Li doesn't respond, choosing to stay silent as he looks at his friend, grateful for her presence. Just then, Li notices the doctor standing nearby. As soon as their eyes meet, the hallucination begins again. The doctor asks, "What did you see this time?" He notes Li's panicked reaction, his heart racing, and continues to probe, "You're so panicked and screaming while in the hallucination." Li, still shaken, decides not to tell the doctor about everything he had experienced. He doesn't want to alarm Nana, who is still standing close by. If she heard, she would surely be scared and worry about him even more. So Li simply says to the doctor, "I didn't fully see everything yet. It wasn't complete." Li then asked the doctor for medicine, telling him he needed a break from the hallucination-filled world. The medicine could stop the hallucinations for a brief time, and the doctor, surprised by the request, realized it was the first time Li had asked for it. As the doctor began to leave the room, he informed Li that the medicine had already been placed on the table. The doctor explained that the medicine only worked temporarily, and if Li truly wanted to escape his situation, he would need to apply everything he had been taught. He added that Li should let things unfold naturally, without interfering with anything. The doctor didn't explain why he said this, but it seemed like he had a reason. Nana, Li's friend, handed him the medicine along with a glass of water. Nana was holding 4 or 5 pills in his hand, but Li, panicking, quickly said he didn't need water to take the medicine. He insisted, Just give me the medicine. As Li took the pills, he started hallucinating again, and saliva began to drip from his mouth. When Li swallowed the medicine, a black liquid began leaking from his mouth, something he could only see in his hallucination. After taking the medicine, Li confidently said, "Now I'm saved. After this, I won't have any more hallucinations." Upon hearing this, his friend became very anxious and asked what he meant by that. He asked if something terrible had happened to Li during the hallucination. His friend was deeply concerned, wondering if the hallucination had caused something horrible to happen to Li. Li didn't want to reveal the truth, but trying to calm his friend, he laughed and said, "It was just some crazy guy trying to feed me something disgusting and talking nonsense." He laughed it off, pretending everything was fine. However, as we focused on Li's face, we noticed that his mouth had turned black, something he was completely unaware of. Trying to maintain his composure, Li then said confidently, "I'm a modern young guy. These hallucinations don't scare me. I know it's all nonsense and none of this could ever happen in reality. So there's nothing to be afraid of." His friend seemed slightly reassured, but just then tentacles began to emerge from Li's mouth. Suddenly, Li found himself back in that strange world without closing his eyes or even falling asleep. The black tentacle they had forced him to eat caused him immense pain. His eyes widened in shock as he struggled to breathe, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't understand how this was happening. "I already took the medicine," he thought. Despite the medicine, he had somehow ended up back in that world. The strangest part was that Li hadn't even closed his eyes, and the medicine was supposed to prevent these hallucinations. He started talking to himself, saying, "If I just close my eyes and open them again, I'll return to my real world. Nothing will happen. There's nothing to be afraid of." He kept reassuring himself as he tightly shut his eyes. But when he opened them again, he was still in the same place with his master and the two guards standing before him. This time he couldn't escape. His master spoke, saying, "Li, you have hysteria. That's why we gave you this substance. It will cure your hysteria. Now you can do your job properly." Then his master and the guards left, laughing, leaving Li behind, sitting in unbearable pain, tears streaming down his face. Black tentacles began to emerge from his mouth, but Li wasn't focused on the pain. Instead, one question consumed his mind: is this world truly real? And the world he had been returning to with all those people, was that fake? Li's heart shattered. Everything he had dreamed of, especially his moments with his friend Nana, suddenly felt like lies. Could it all have been false? He began to believe that this world might be the real one. After all, even though he had taken the medicine and hadn't closed his eyes, he still ended up here. And now, even closing his eyes couldn't bring him back to what he thought was his real world. Impossible. Nana is not an illusion. After finally swallowing the medicine, Huowang, crying, believes she hasn't left him. But Nana vanishes with the wind into the air. Huowang begins to scream desperately, "Why am I in this cursed place? Why won't this illness let me leave?" The next day, as the members cultivate, Bai Lingmiao slowly approaches with 3 steamed buns. "Senior brother Li hasn't eaten all day," she says. Then he asks, "How did you get this pendant?" Lingmiao replies that she received it as a gift from him. She explained that she didn't want it, but he insisted, pushing it into her hands. "After forcing me to accept it, you laughed and hugged me, saying you weren't sick." The protagonist questions, "And then?" Lingmiao continues, "Senior brother Wang took the chance to strike your head with a rock. He thought you were dead and then tried to abuse me." Huowang, curious, asks, "That chubby guy with the cleft lip? What happened to him? Wang, was it?" The girl explains, "He was killed by senior brother Li, don't you remember?" Huowang then recalls that, in the other world, he indeed killed the madman from the asylum. He thinks to himself, so it wasn't the old Lu. There is no old Lu after all. I'm just completely insane. In the next scene, a cauldron is shown being cleaned. If this place is truly reality, he ponders, then the former sister and the cultivation group, not just them but everyone here, will die. And the one responsible for all this is that mangy-headed bastard. Xianyang, it seems you have something to tell me. When did that mangy-headed one appear? Master, Xianyang responds, answer my question. What are you thinking right now? This disciple, who admires the master's cultivation art with love, was merely pondering when I might reach such a level of cultivation. Another disciple, envious, remarks, what a pathetic excuse. However, the master smiles. Ambition is good. It's not bad at all. The disciple is surprised, realizing the master fell for the ploy. The master explains, it's not that I don't want to teach you, but the path of external cultivation isn't simple. Ordinary pills and alchemy are one thing, But if you wish to master both internal and external cultivation to achieve immortality, Master, are you close to achieving immortality? Fortunately, I've surpassed certain hurdles. But immortality isn't simple. However, this master can surely achieve it. Do you know why? This disciple doesn't know the reason. Another disciple interrupts, Master, it's almost midnight. If we don't begin refining the pills soon, we might waste precious time. Very well, let's prepare the ritual. Yes, Master. Xin Yang, go to the materials room and fetch the medicinal herbs requested yesterday. What medicinal guide? The white medicinal guide you were supposed to bring 2 days ago when you had your hysteria, but didn't. As a result, the master lost precious pill refining time. Did you forget? The properties of the medicinal guide and the timing of refinement affect the quality of the pills. No detail can be overlooked. But never mind, it's useless to explain this to you. Get up and go work. Later, Bai Lingmiao is taken by senior brother Li. If you manage to leave here alive, she pleads, could you deliver a message to my family? My parents live at the foot of Niuxing Mountain in Liang country. Just tell them their daughter is useless and couldn't care for them in their old age or until their deaths. I can't help with that. Your time is running out. Come with me now, he replies. They arrive at the site where the master is preparing the refinement. Master, I brought the medicinal guide, says Xin Yang. Perfect. My dear disciple, come here now. Bai Lingmiao is pulled by an invisible force. As the master grabs her neck, he notices something odd. What bad luck. Why did you fail at this moment? The properties of the medicinal guide have been completely altered. Xin Yang, take this girl back. Yes, master. It's done. Next, I just need to get Bai Lingmiao out of here. Wait, Xin Yang. Since this guide won't work, fetch another for me. I recall there's another white medicinal guide. Go quickly and return fast. Don't delay the alchemy. In the supply room, Xin Yang realizes the grim fate. As I understood my mistake, I couldn't save Bai Lingmiao. That wretched man kept creating elixirs and I couldn't save anyone. Tomorrow and the days after would always demand more sacrificial guides. As the cauldron opens, a demonic face emerges. I can't be his assistant, Yang declares. The master hands him a pill. Here's a gift. The other disciples aren't as studious as you. This pill is for you. Thank you, master. Thank you for this pill. I can save everyone. I can save myself, Yang thinks. Good disciple, eat it while it's hot. I have to kill him. The protagonist decides to swallow the pill, but it feels wrong. It's too hot. My body is burning. Xin Yang, return and rest. This pill is powerful. It will take time for your body to fully absorb it. Yes, master. Later, back in the supply room, Yang notices his newfound strength. I can crush rocks with effort. But remembering the other victim begging not to die and knowing these pills were made from humans, I've only received one pill. That wretch took several. How could I kill him? Yang coughs blood. Suddenly, the young girl appears and asks, are you okay? Senior brother Li was told, you don't need to curse yourself. You're strong too. The nervous young woman, clutching her thigh, asked, Senior brother Li, are you planning to go against the master again? Shook, keep your voice down. Are you saying you came here just for me? He might see what's happening here, Li replied. It's fine, senior brother, she assured him. Today is the day Master Yu goes to the market. The master can't hear us now. Meanwhile, the other workers thought the protagonist was retrieving more medicinal guides. We're doomed, they murmured. As Li suspected, everyone now saw Yang as an accomplice of the bald bastard. This place isn't safe. Let's move to another location, he said, pulling the girl by the hand. A young boy observed them silently from a distance. Now you can continue. What were you saying earlier about the old Master Yu? Li asked. The old Master Yu? It's something you can't see or feel. My grandfather once told me that only high-level practitioners can summon it. Anyway, the old Master Yu goes to the market on the 1st and 15th days of every month, she explained. So the old master goes to the market on those 2 days? In other words, during those days, the bald bastard can't monitor our lives in the temple. That's valuable information, Li remarked. The girl pressed, anyway, senior brother Li, let's get back to business. Do you really want to go against the master again? Of course I do. If I could, I'd eat his flesh and drink his blood, he replied with venom. Then count me in on this mission. I want to help too, the young woman said determinedly. Suddenly, a boy holding a piece of bread said, count me in as well. Senior brother Li, you might not remember me. I'm just a nameless child born and raised here. You can call me Gua. Here, senior brother and senior sister, take this bread, he offered. Were you eavesdropping on us? The girl demanded. No. I wouldn't dare. I only came looking for senior brother Li for protection and happened to overhear the last words senior sister said. He stammered. You don't know anything about this. How can we trust you if you want to join us? I admire senior brother Li, isn't that reason enough to join? Gua asked earnestly. Xianyang, wasn't your group formed in the same way at the beginning? Li asked. Gua, aren't you afraid of me? How could I be afraid? Senior brother Li's actions were inevitable too, Gua replied. Fine, you can join us. We're counting on you, Gua. Don't regret it, Li said. The protagonist reflected. I hope he doesn't meet the same fate as Xianyang's. In the days that followed, the group continued seeking ways to kill Dan Yangzi, but with just Li and the two others, it was almost impossible to deal with the master. During that time, they moved the medicinal guides from the storage room to the alchemy room one by one. The protagonist couldn't forget their final words, echoing in his head until the 8th medicinal guide. Master, the medicinal guide is ready, Xianyang announced. Well done, Xianyang. You've been performing admirably lately. As I said, our Shishandonghua sect rewards merit and punishes mistakes, the master replied. Since you want to learn alchemy, I'll start teaching you today the formula for creating the nutritive pills. Don't underestimate the formula. Though it's simple, it remains a heavenly method recorded in celestial scriptures. The master explained, remember this, 20 taels of human elixir, half a caddy of balsam seeds, 24 sunrise stones. The fire must be lit at 3 a.m., the bathing hour. Use your eyes to illuminate it silently, your breath to boast it, and your spirit to fumigate it. Gradually raise the fire with a gentle flame and relight it at 4 a.m. Then exhale. While listening, Xianyang secretly wrote the formula on his clothing. Master, I'll write the formula on my robe, he said. But the master scowled. Master, please review what I wrote and see if anything is missing, Xianyang insisted. Suddenly the master kicked him hard in the face. Why the hell did that maniac do that? Why did he suddenly kick me? Xianyang thought. Although his handwriting wasn't great, it was legible. The master hadn't even looked at it. He seemed more concerned about the act of writing the recipe. Wait, Xianyang realized. Back when we were in class, we never had scriptures or any written records from this temple. Everything taught so far was passed down orally. Could this cursed maniac be illiterate? If he can't read, then who read the celestial book he claims to follow? Another disciple approached. I didn't expect this, Xianyang. The master is willing to share the celestial book's formula with you. He must truly value you. Senior brother Zhenkuan, this is the master's way of showing his favor, Xianyang said carefully. But Zhenkuan, angered, punched Xianyang in the ribs. Who do you think you are? He growled. Bruised but undeterred, Xianyang smirked. The master recognizes my efforts in cultivation. Perhaps you're just not good enough, senior brother Zhenkuan. Infuriated, Zhenkuan channeled magic into his hand and struck Xianyang with such force that the impact echoed throughout the temple. Time passed. Zhenkuan sneered, Junior brother Xianyang, why are you so disobedient? If it weren't for the master's pills, you'd be dead by now. Didn't I tell you not to provoke Zhenkuan? Why do you keep doing it? As the days continued, Xianyang's suspicions about the master and his twisted methods deepened. With each attempt to escape or resist, the group faced increasing peril. The temple's secrets remained shrouded in fear, manipulation, and bloodshed. The protagonist began to laugh maniacally. Didn't the master already give junior brother Xianyang the medicine? Why is he acting crazy again? Someone questioned. A breaking point has been found, the protagonist declared, laughing like a madman. After the chaos, the protagonist deliberately created further conflicts with Zhenkuan to provoke him into revealing news about his master. Judging by Zhenkuan's expression, it seemed something significant was about to happen. The protagonist secretly observed Zhenkuan, but Zhenkuan continued his training step by step as usual. Just when the protagonist thought he might have been mistaken and that Zhenkuan wasn't as greedy as he seemed, February 15th arrived. On that day when Li Huowang began refining pills, Zhenkuan deviated from his usual practice. The door to Li Huowang's residence was left open, signaling that Zhenkuan had someone inside to investigate. Suspiciously, Zhenkuan chose to stand guard outside at such a critical moment. Was it really him? Disciple Yuan? The two disciples conversed, and after a moment, they used a talisman and disappeared. They've finally left, the protagonist thought. The restriction on the room must have been lifted by Zhenkuan and his group. Now is my chance to enter. Inside, the protagonist grimaced. Tish, this place reeks like the stench of rotting rats. Suddenly he noticed a stone tablet. This stone, it must be the celestial script Li Huowang mentioned. The writing is hard to read. This celestial scripture is clearly a sutra. There's no alchemical method written here. How could he refine pills using this rock? Unless... A mysterious voice interrupted, asking the protagonist, "Are you colluding with that person from earlier? Don't move. All it takes is ringing these bells, and her father will return immediately." "Ah, I see. Fine, go ahead and ring the bells. I'll just wait for the master to arrive and discover you can't understand the celestial scriptures." "You've been lying to him this entire time," the protagonist retorted. "How did you figure that out?" asked the frightened girl. "So my suspicions were correct," the protagonist mused. "She's the one interpreting the celestial scriptures for Li Huowang. The girl stammered, but it's not my fault. I can't understand those damned celestial scriptures, but he forced me to keep reading them to him." "Are you not afraid he'll find out?" the protagonist questioned. "He's illiterate. He'll always believe whatever I tell him," the girl admitted. "So, the alchemical formula using humans to refine pills? Was that something you made up and fed to him as well?" "Yes," she confessed, nodding. "I just remembered bits and pieces and told him that's what the scriptures said. Don't worry, it won't kill anyone. I don't want him to get hurt. I just don't want him to think I'm useless, that he'll discard me. I have no hands or feet." Suddenly, the protagonist grabbed a vase and smashed it to the ground. The girl cried out in pain. "It hurts. It hurts," she wailed. "The alchemical formula might not kill people, but because of your formula, Li Huowang is eating humans," the protagonist said coldly, glaring at her as she writhed on the ground, screaming for help. Moments later, all the sect members were gathered in the main hall. The master arrived with a grim demeanor. Who secretly entered the master's house while he was refining elixirs?" he demanded. The room was silent. Realizing no one would speak, the master decided to interrogate each member individually. "Changming and Changren, what were you doing while the master was refining elixirs?" "Master, we were guarding the gate of Qingfeng Temple as per your instructions." Changming and Changren dared not be careless, they replied nervously. The master emitted a murderous aura as he stared down one of the guards. "And Shen Yuan?" he asked. Shen Yuan began to explain himself, but the protagonist knew his turn was coming next. "Shen Yang," the master called, placing a heavy hand on the protagonist's shoulder. "After distributing the medicine today, where were you for the rest of the day?" The protagonist responded, "Disciple returned to the hall to prepare the elixir materials you will need for the next refinement." The oppressive atmosphere hung thick in the air. The master asked again, "Did any of the disciples see Shen Yang in the house?" No one answered. "Think carefully before you speak," the master warned. "If anyone helps uncover who invaded the master's house, not only will they be spared, but they will also be rewarded handsomely." Suddenly the white-robed girl spoke up. "Brother Li was with us at that time. I can vouch for him." "You can guarantee that?" the master questioned. "Yes, I can," she replied. "And the rest of you? Does anyone else have anything to say?" Out of the blue someone interrupted. "Immortal Father, may I speak?" Everyone turned in surprise, including the protagonist, the girl, the disciples, and the master. "That Shen Yang? He didn't come to the warehouse even once today," the figure revealed, casting suspicion on the protagonist. "So, Immortal Grandfather, I helped find the person. Can I go home now?" The master, radiating a devastating aura, shouted, "This morning the medicinal manual was personally delivered by Shen Yang. If he never went to the supply room today, then how the hell did he get the medicine? Are you trying to die, boy? Are you seeking death?" "Immortal Grandfather, I was wrong. I was blinded by ambition, and that's why I lied to you." The boy fell to his knees, his forehead slamming against the ground as he begged for forgiveness. The master ignored him at first, but when he noticed one of the disciples with a faint smile on his face, he moved in a blur, tearing off a portion of the disciple's face. When Shen Yang was being falsely accused by that brat, the master's voice was chilling as blood dripped from his fingertips. "Tell me why. Why were you the only one happy while Shen Yang was being falsely accused of committing a crime? Answer me, Shen Yin." "A master, no. Please, it wasn't me." Shen Yin screamed in terror, blood pouring from his torn face. "It was Zhengkuan. Senior brother Zhengkuan forced me to do it." Zhengkuan, realizing he had been betrayed and now faced the master's deadly gaze, bolted like a cheetah. "So, it was you all along," the master muttered coldly. "I should have realized sooner. Only Zhengkuan could have undone the restrictions on my chamber." As he spoke, His hand reached into his pocket. Does he truly think he can escape? That I would let him come and go as he pleases? The master's fingers closed around something, a coin. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed it into the air, then stomped down with immense force. The moment the coin shattered into 4 pieces, a ghostly image of it appeared inside Jinkuan's skull. And just like the coin, he too was split, his body torn into 5 parts, losing both arms and legs instantly. The remaining disciples stood frozen in fear, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Even Xianyang and the white-haired girl were horrified beyond words. Master, I was wrong. When the gate veteran Jingdo was hunting us down, it was my 2 younger brothers who sacrificed their lives so we could escape. Silence. The master's voice was cold, his gaze piercing. I know exactly what you're thinking right now. Master, I have already become useless. Please spare me this time. But the master slowly placed his foot atop Jinkuan's head. You are just like your 2 younger brothers. All of you, mere wolves that can be raised. With that, he stomped down violently, crushing Jinkuan's skull, sending blood splattering in all directions. You, the master pointed at someone. Come and pay your respects to the 3 deities. The protagonist stood there, momentarily dazed. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he slowly kneeled before the 3 deities and bowed. 7, 8, 9 kowtows. When it was done, he knew what would come next, for he was still holding the incense sticks. Having paid his respects to the ancestral master, he heard the declaration that would change everything. From this day forth, you shall be this Taoist master's most favored disciple. Congratulations, senior brother. Congratulations. One by one, all the disciples stepped forward to salute their newly appointed senior. All right, Xianyang, come with me now. The rest of you are dismissed. The moment had finally arrived. Don't worry, you damned bald-headed fool. I will help you achieve your goal of immortality. The scene shifted. They were once again heading toward the sacred scriptures. I recall that you can read, can you not, Xianyang? Yes, master. Good. It is good that you can read. The master then began to weave his magic. The sound of cords slicing through the air echoed in Dan Yangzi's chamber as black threads that had once bound the stone tablet unraveled, slithering into his sleeve like writhing black serpents. At that moment, the sacred text was fully revealed before the protagonist. Come here. Take a look at the sacred scriptures. Can you read what is written here? Yes, master. That airhead completely made up all those previous cultivation methods to achieve immortality. If the protagonist couldn't keep up, he feared his secret would be exposed. So instead, he would rather tear everything down himself. The disciple seems to understand, the master mused while analyzing the stone tablet. Stop whining and tell me everything you see. Master, in these scriptures, why isn't the recipe for the blood-nourishing elixir here? The one you taught me last time? The protagonist continued, Master, you said that to become an immortal, one must refine both internal and external pills. But the method for refining internal pills, it's not here. What? The master's eyes widened. I'm telling the truth, the protagonist declared with conviction. He had no idea what kind of lies the girl in the vase had told Dan Yangzi. If he followed the original script, there was a chance he would fail. So, he decided it would be easier to be honest and figure something else out later. Besides, it wasn't even a lie. It was the truth. The entire method to become an immortal was nothing more than a fabricated story the girl in the vase had invented. Naturally, he would create his own fabricated story and method as well. This stone tablet records a technique for cultivating internal strength. It says here that on the eve of the new year, one can use various external pills alongside this technique to capture a portion of the spiritual energy that the heavens release into the mortal realm. We can then absorb it and use it to ascend to immortality. Li Huowang stared at the stone tablet, his voice unwavering, speaking each word with such confidence that it sounded like absolute truth. A cultivation technique? It also requires external elixirs, the master asked. There seem to be multiple types of pills, the protagonist responded. This one requires 120 grams of cinnabar, 5 grams of white strychnine, 60 grams of acidin, and a wandering god? Master, what kind of ingredient is a wandering god? No wonder. No wonder the girl in the vase had said that this celestial scripture was always changing, making it impossible to memorize. No wonder he hadn't become an immortal after all this time. She had been deceiving this Taoist all along. Dan Yangzi didn't respond immediately. Instead, he observed for a while before speaking. Child? Even that girl managed to deceive me. Are you trying to do the same? The protagonist answered immediately. Master, This is the method to become an immortal. How could I possibly deceive you? After all, I also want to achieve immortality. The master stared at him, almost as if amused, trying to see if he could uncover any lies. Good. Dan Yangzi clapped his hands and laughed joyfully. First, explain this cultivation technique to me. Let's wait until I, your master, fully master it before refining any other pills. Then we shall ascend to immortality together, master and disciple. Yes, master. Finally, after a long day, the protagonist returned home. Fortunately, he had read countless novels, magazines, and manga. Otherwise, the techniques he created today would have been instantly exposed as nonsense by the leper. Suddenly, he heard a voice shout. Senior brother Li. Rest assured, now that I have returned safely, the promise I made to you, to escape, will naturally be fulfilled. Soon, you will all be able to go home. Senior brother Li, from now on, you are my father, the boy said. What are you all doing? If not for everyone's help at Jingyi Hall today, I would already be dead. Who would have thought that in this strange world, he would actually become companions with these odd-looking people? Everyone, I have something to ask of you. This concerns whether or not we can successfully escape from this Qingfeng temple. What is it, Senior Brother Li? Do any of you know any other stories? Any rumors? A legend like the one my grandfather once told me? Other than mastering you, I once heard my grandfather mention something evil. Something called grandmother. This grandmother doesn't sound like anything special. Shh. Brother Li, keep your voice down or grandmother will hear you. She is truly an evil thing. First of all, her appearance is different depending on who sees her. Some say she looks like a long-eared monster. Others say she resembles a deceased elder. And, if we say to grandmother too often, do you know what happens? Grandmother will ride on your back, and on mine. If she finds us, we will become a great-grandmother together. What do you think, Senior Brother Li? Does this information about the great-grandmother seem correct? The protagonist looked unsettled by the story. You turn into a great-grandmother just by staying near her too long? This world was so strange, filled with inexplicable things. No problem. This information about grandmother was definitely useful. Does anyone else have anything to share? Immediately hands shot up. I have a story. A young boy began to speak. Senior brother, I heard that some people skin children and wrap their bodies in dog hides, training them to act like dogs. Then they use these children, who understand human speech, to perform tricks on the streets. I don't want to hear these kinds of horror stories, the protagonist cut him off. He wanted information about the master, not disturbing tales. Brother, I know something about the fish-in-law. This man is Zhao Wu, the medicinal catalyst of Qingfeng Temple. I heard the elders at home talk about him. The fish-in-law not only looks strange, but it also only appears during floods. That really does sound strange. Alright, tell me about the fish-in-law. Senior, I also have a story. The medicinal catalyst of Qingfeng Temple, Shazi. I know Dao Dao. Alright, that's enough for today. I'll be back soon. You all just wait patiently for my news. News?
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, it really helps. And for more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see another part. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you next time. Bye-bye.